everyone. Welcome to Carolyn Talks. This is the podcast / YouTube channel where I, your host, Carolyn Hines, film critic and journalist, talk to film creatives around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And this is one of my interviews for the 2024 New York Asian Film Festival. And today I'm joined by the writer and director and producer, Adrian Teh, to talk about his film Riversi, which is a time loop introspection on what is the purpose of time. And can time be tamed? And the answer is no. No, it can't. But it's a very interesting film, and it's a very dynamic film, and I love how you talk and I love how the film talks about cherishing the moments that we have with our family. But before and the film is having its premiere here in New York. Well, I'm not in New York, but it's having its premiere in New York, and I'm very excited to have the director to talk with me. Yay, thank you.
Hello, Karen. Hi, everyone.
So my first question for you is, looking through your bio, you're originally an executive producer and a producer. You've produced many TV shows and films. I want to start there because, like, how did you start? How did you get into the film industry, and what made you decide to start with producing rather than like writing or directing?
Right. So I started to produce my first film back in 2010. It was a very coincidental situation that I got involved in that production, and then because the director, the first film that I ever produced was called Ais Kacang Puppy Love, and then that movie, because the director himself, it was his first directorial debut as well, so we kind of like trying to figure out how to work things together. So I started off in the industry by working as freelance. I worked in all sorts of departments before, art department, production assistants, even wardrobe, location assistants. Then after a couple of years, like a year and a half, and then I got to know the director, and then as a youngsters, we tried to do something together. And just for your information, back in those days, filming industry is not as advanced as here or probably not as advanced as any country even in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, right? So that's how we get together, try to sort things out together, and then I managed to produce, he managed to direct the first ever film that we did together. It's called Ais Kacang Puppy Love, and it was a success. And then through that film, I got to know a lot of people, like a lot of players from Malaysia filming industry, and then that's how I start to talk to people, try to propose to one film after the other. That's how I started my career as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I think like the Malaysian film industry, and very in particular, would be considered very young in comparison to a lot of other film industries, as you mentioned, even in Southeast Asia, but I think for the time that Malaysia has been really into the film industry, like filmmakers have been really making a lot of progress very swiftly, I would say. Like even taking a film like yours, for instance, and Riversi, it is very it was what would be called a very experimental film because it deals with time and time loops, which means that it requires a lot of editing, a lot of sophisticated editing and cinematography styles, as well as the acting from the actors and like your directing style. Like, all of that is very sophisticated, and it shows how quickly the industry and the people within the industry is growing. Like I've mentioned this before, but last year I actually interviewed Abu Aril Bakar. He's the director of a film called Salat and another film called Walid. And so like I got a chance to talk to him. So that was his Salat Warriors was his first film, and within like a year and a half, when he made Walid, like a year and a half after, like just his directing style have changed so much over that time, but as well as the production quality, because it showed how fast Malaysia is developing. So for you, like I think also like having that experience as an executive producer, you really get to see how the film industry is growing from the ground up. So how is that kind of what inspired you to take your step into becoming a writer and a director? Because you're like, okay, we're at a point in our industry where we can do it. We can support a film like this technically with regards to like editing and all of that. But also you were like, I've been in this long enough that I think you're like, let me dip my toe in the pond and as a director and a writer.
I think we got it. The way I approached filming industry is that I've always wanted to be a director instead of a producer. So, but I started my foot by becoming a producer first. So yeah, with my experience in producing, then slowly I got myself into directing, and I would say probably I co-write, or even I co-write most of the movies that I direct. So to me, direct is better for a director to understand the story better, to write this, or even to get involved in the creative writing of the story. So that's how I always do. That's how the way of me working on my film.
So okay, so and that's gonna be segue to my next. So your co-writer is Nasruddin.
Yes.
And so talk to me about working with them and like coming up with the story, because it's so intricate. There's so many moving parts in this story.
Yeah. So basically I came out with the story probably, I would say this story I first wrote it, I would say 8-9 years ago. Yeah. 8-9 years ago. And then I wrote the story. Actually, it was meant for another China market, but then it didn't happen. So I kept it in my library. And then since 2018, I've been if you look at my filmography on IMDb, I've worked a lot. I've directed a lot of action films in Malaysia, and then that's when I thought I don't see myself just as an action film director. I see myself more like a storyteller. So that's why I wanted to venture into different genres. And 2 years ago, I'm not sure if you remember this film called Imaginor, which also came to New York Asian Film Festival 2 years ago. So yeah, that film got me thinking, because it was a very refreshing film in Malaysian filming industry. So because it is not action, it's not comedy, it's not horror, which are the most famous genre in Malaysia, or probably everywhere around the world. So after I watched that film, I thought, hey, that was a very nice film, very good film. And then that film got me thinking about Riversi, that, hey, I got something similar. So that's when, because I was at the junction where I thought of trying out new genre other than action genre. So I picked this story up again, and then I spoke to we call him Bujok, my scriptwriter. His name is Bujok. So I spoke to him, and then he's a young lad. He's much younger than me, and then very creative guy. So, and then of course he was interested, and then we sat down together, and then we discussed like how should we approach this movie, and what are the references that we can do, what are the films that we can use as our reference. And how do we make this film special? Because there are so many time traveling movies out there. So how can we make our story kind of like stand out in a way? So like you have watched a movie, so you can tell from the movie that there is this the collateral damage, or there is this a price to pay. Because most of the films in regards of time traveling movie, most of the time travel movie that we've seen, they don't have any they can just time travel freely. There's no collateral damage. There's no consequences to it, right? So that's the first thing that we want to tackle. So if we put if we let the hero who is Akdid in the story, what if we put a bit more on his shoulder, like he can't just time travel easily. There's a consequences that he must bear, and then let's start from there. And then see how it goes. So yeah, so that's how we got this whole story started.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, there's a price to pay for in person, because even with films that do have like time travel and like our time loop films, and even if they do talk about collateral damage, the collateral damage is always on kind of almost on a global scale, whereas you guys kind of shrink it down to him, like the price is his personally to pay. Yes. Like what happens doesn't affect like people to the 6th degree. It's not about a global consequence, it's about his own personal consequence, which is what I think makes this film very special, because he has to deal with the personal burden of this time travel, going doing it over and over and over and over. And the toll that it takes, this isn't a spoiler because it's in the synopsis, is that it takes time away from him.
Yep.
Like if he wants to travel back in time is like, oh, you want to mess with me? I'm going to do something to you, and I'm going to take time away from you, which is a very interesting concept, and it's something that we as human beings deal with every day. We always think, oh, like how long do we have to live?
Yep.
Like we could get sick, like that's time away. Like if we go, like there's things that that just like ages us, like stress, trauma, which is a part of the whole aging process in this film. Like trauma ages him, stress ages him, and that cost ages him. So talk to me about that, because I think a really big theme in the film is about trauma, how trauma affects us physically and as well as mentally.
Yeah. I think first and foremost, it's like what you've mentioned just now, is what the so-called time traveling power that he has is actually overdrafting his lifespan. What's that? Sorry.
No, the balloons is for me.
Oh, did I do something?
No, it's a setting that some Zoom things have where if you do like certain hand gestures, like things will appear. Is you did like this?
Okay, anyway.
I saw
Yeah.
someone do a thumbs up once, and the thumbs up appeared as a bubble, so it's kind of funny.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I was saying the basically he's gifted with this special power, but then it's not free of charge, right? So he has to overdraft his own lifespan in order for him to be able to time travel. So I think we are living in a situation where we as a human being we always think like what if
Yeah.
what if this, what if that. So but I guess ultimately the story tells Riversi is about, like you mentioned just now, living in the moment. There's no what if. What if doesn't matter. Like even if you look at Akid, the hero in the story, he has the ability to time travel. So he has corrected his past. He has tried to redeem himself for whatever error that he has done. But ultimately, towards the end of the movie, he did a big time travel back. Yeah, he did a big leap back in time, right? So what he was trying to do was also trying to live in that particular moment again. So I think this is the most important message of the movie. Like, you probably got traumatized by certain event at this current moment, but more importantly is to live through the moment. Living in that moment is the most important thing.
Yeah, and that's and it's not only about living in the moment, but I think it's also about making sure the people in our lives enjoy the moments that they have as well. Because another big theme of this film, like there's Akid who's played by who I think is played brilliantly by Beto Kusyairy. Like he meets his wife Sarah, played by Shiqin Kamal, and like their very first in-depth conversation is about time, is about valuing that. And I thought it was really unique that their very first conversation is her talking about, I don't want to regret my past because there's nothing I can do about changing the past, but I also don't want to fear the future. She's like, I don't want to fear what's coming. I want to just enjoy this moment. And even as she's thinking about the future, she's like, I'm not going to think about it in a negative way, which for a lot of us, especially in the times that we're living in right now, the future seems so daunting, the future seems so uncertain. And the film is really talking about, even if we know like something bad is coming in the future, you should still enjoy the moment you have now, because you can't really do anything about it.
Yep.
So talk to me about the casting, because the film really has to work with Beto and Shiqin in particular, because not only because of their chemistry, but because they both have very different outlooks on time. Like Beto has this Beto as Akid, he has this weight on his shoulder. Like he's constantly worried about time. He's constantly worried about what time do I have. Like he's always looking at his watch. Like there's this little thing he's always looking at his watch. And talk to me first about making his job being a negotiator with the police. I thought it was very interesting because to me, I read it as a negotiator, he has to be very careful with his time, because he has to make sure that the way he speaks is in a calm manner, which isn't rushed, which is a concept of time, He has to make sure he has to spend time with the people that he's trying to talk them from these intense situations. So like he can be there for minutes to hours, just spending time to show them that he cares. So I wanted to talk to me about casting Beto and then working around this just Akid and how he himself relates to time. Just like not even as a time traveler, but just how he as with his job relates to time.
So basically Beto, he's a fantastic actor. It's the first time of me working with him. And then we discussed a lot about his character. So we're trying to create this chemistry between Akid and Sarah, right? So I mean it's very obvious that you can tell Akid is kind of an introvert person, who has this burden on his shoulder that he can't speak of because he can time travel. And then where Sarah, she's a very extrovert person, like very sporty kind of personality. So that's why when they meet each other, they complete each other. It's supposed to, the feeling that they have for each other is that, oh my God, you complete me. Like, Akid needed that energy from Sarah, and then Sarah needed that stability from Akid. That's why they got married. So also for Akid, I think it's not just about the burden on his shoulder. It's also about he always, because he knows he can time travel. He's constantly questioning himself, like, what should I be doing with my power? If I'm that good, or if I can time travel, why couldn't I save my dad at the very beginning? So that's why he has this constant pressure or this constant concern in his mind. That's why he becomes an introvert eventually. He doesn't talk a lot. He doesn't speak a lot, although he has the power to play God. But he becomes who he is in the story. And the reason why we made him as a negotiator, because we want to put this character like always confronted with life and death situation. Like how he understand people, or how he decide whether or not he should travel back to save this person, use his power. Like, because as you know, when he uses his power, he has to, in a way, pay back with his own life, right? So slowly he's trying to understand his responsibility, with this gifted power. So and then eventually he met Sarah. And then Sarah is the one, because Sarah is very outspoken, very extrovert, and very she has a lot of positive vibes. And then that influenced Akid to hey, take a step back, live in the moment. We are just human beings. Doesn't matter. Nobody should play God. Just live in the moment. If you make an error, learn from it. Live at the moment. Don't worry about the future. Don't be bothered by the past. And then that, you're right. During the first conversation in the car, Sarah did actually said a lot of things that kind of hit Akid. Because he was taken aback, because up till that point he was always bothered by the death of his dad. But Sarah did say, don't be bothered by the past. Our past made us who we are today. So that's how Akid immediately got hooked by Sarah. So that's the chemistry between the two characters.
The chemistry works really good. And I thought it was interesting also, like the kind of like the hobby of the sport that you give her is Aikido. And Aikido is it's a Japanese martial arts, but it's a very specific type where it's very slow moving. You have to be very controlled and very precise in your movements. It's not like kendo, where you have like a stick and it's like fast and quick. Hers is more slow. So I thought that was a kind of an interesting juxtaposition, again, dealing with time where you're like, oh, she's not a runner, and like her hobby isn't running, it isn't cycling, and isn't like it's not like a super quick sport like boxing or even Muay Thai or something like that. It's like, nah, it's going to be this slow form of martial arts. So talk to me about that, because I thought, me being a nerd with regards to like action films and stuff, I was like, I need to know why you chose Aikido.
Right. First of all, we need to make Sarah strong. Right? She has to be a strong character, who is very independent. And then I thought, it's good that if she practices a type of martial art in the story. So I did my research on a certain type of martial arts, and then I got attracted to Aikido because I think Aikido is very graceful. The whole motion and the ideology behind Aikido is also very very, very beautiful, because Aikido, they don't attack. It's always about defense. So you don't see Aikido in Olympic Games, because they don't engage. They are prepared, and then if people come to them, they embrace, and then they react on it. So that's why there's no competition in Aikido. They don't fight. It's always just performance. So I think this ideology behind Aikido is very very beautiful, because they don't believe in violence, but if you come at me with violence, I know how to react. And then that's how. And then plus the motion, and then the choreograph itself. I've watched some YouTube videos. I thought they are really nice, really, really graceful and beautiful. And then of course their gi, with their hakama and everything looks very nice and looks very special. That's why I chose Aikido. I think it's something new and something good on screen.
Yeah, you don't really get to see Aikido even, and I watch like a lot of Japanese films and stuff and dramas, and even then the sport we normally see is
Taekwondo, karate,
kendo, like those kind of sports, it's not really Aikido, I guess, because it is like slow paced, and it's not about attack, it's about defense, so visually on screen is going to have a completely different energy to say like another form of martial arts. So I thought that was interesting, so I was like, I have to ask. And and another question I wanted to ask you, so the other thing that I talked about trauma, but another thing that I think that really stands out to me in this film with regards to how you guys structure time in this film is that it's about becoming obsessed with time. Like, Akid, he eventually, like, this traumatic thing happens and he becomes very obsessed with time, and he becomes obsessed with controlling it and beating it. And then it's like, but then you realize like time is inevitable. That's like the one constant in our life, is that time marches forward. It is inevitable. You can't control it, because even as he goes back in time, he still has to go forward. He can't stay in that. He can't stay in that state. He can't pause it. He still has to keep going forward. So like there's always going to be a pass. You know, like every action, you know, like the third law of thermodynamics, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yes.
And he has that. And he, no matter how many times he does, it takes him forever to learn that, to understand like you can't control time no matter how much you try. So I want to ask you again about that. I think that's one of the rules in the film. Because his dad gives him three rules. One is money gained through time can't be held on to. You will eventually lose it. And traveling can't be, you have to learn to accept what's meant to happen naturally, which is again the concept of time being inevitable. And you can only go back in a calm state. Talk to me about how time being an inevitable consequence of us existing, but that particular the last one, you can only travel back in time when you're calm. Talk to me about that one, because I thought that was super interesting and how that ties into time being inevitable.
Right. So basically that three rules, I mean, the first and the second one is obvious, right? Because you don't play God, and then you just to, you know, because every time traveling movie that we watch, there's a lot of what if, like, hey, what if I just go back and then I know how the stock market goes tomorrow, and then we can get rich. So basically that's to settle that. And then the reason why we put the third rule, which is he can only time travel back when he's at calm or at a peace, he's at peace, is because we don't want him to travel back ruthlessly, Akid, you know. And then it's just like an obstacle to show that he has grown from compared to when he was at his teenage year when the father died, and just to show that he become a master of time traveling. You know, it's just to show that, because that was the rule that the dad set for him, that, you know, hey, you can't travel when you're angry and when you're not at peace, right? But to show that his dedication eventually to save Sarah and the son, Anas, he overcome, or he has beaten that rule to be able to go back, to show how dedicated he was in order to rescue his family. Yep.
Yeah. I just thought the calm state was interesting, because I think that is definitely the first time I've ever seen in any film or show I've watched about time traveling, where the person's emotional state has a stake in how they travel back in time. And if they can't, you know, usually it's just about think about it and you can do it, you know. It's not really about you have to be fully calm to do it. But then I noticed for him, like, the more he does it, the more agitated he gets. And that's because of the trauma. He's experiencing trauma over and over and over and over. And I was wondering, like, is it because he's doing it in a hyper emotional state that's affecting the consequences, you know, like affecting the results? Because if he's calm, it works out. But if he's not calm and he manages to do it, the situation gets worse each and every time. I kind of saw it as like his emotional state is actually impacting the results.
Oh yeah, that's a very unique perspective. I actually never thought of that. You know, for us, yeah, there's a very unique perspective. The reason, like I mentioned just now, the reason why we put the third rule is to show that Akid grows. You know, Akid grows, you know, and even, you know, grows as a human being. Also, he grows better in order to manage his time traveling ability. I mean, just like a hurdle for us to set for Akid for him to overcome, to show that he's good eventually.
Yeah, because it was just like. Yeah, because when he started doing, I'm like, dude, you're not calm. You're doing the opposite of everything your dad told you to do. And like the deaths kept getting worse. And so that's what I want us to talk now, because like, I'm not going to say, we're not spoiling it, not saying who, but when he goes back and he's trying to stop these deaths, they just become more ridiculous and absurd each and every time. Now, I have to ask, talk to me about working out the deaths sequences with your prop masters, your cinematographer, because I think the cinematography and the editing in this film are excellent. Like, this doesn't work without the cinematography and the editing. The editing is just like just flawless. So talk to me about working out. You're like, we are gonna do all like, like hundreds of sequences, and like she fell on a bar. So I'm like, really, a bar? So
I mean, do you enjoy the sequence, the way we present it in the movie?
They're very unique and it's very interesting. And it was just like, it was like you guys were literally like, put any scenario possible, we're gonna do this. This is what's gonna happen. Climb it up in the tree to go and get a kite. Well, there you go. Off. I was like, wow.
You know, okay. Basically, that moment in the movie is basically okay from the script itself. Bujok and I, you know, we just simply put there like, Sarah and Anas, they have to die like at least 15 times. 15 times. Yeah. So we just have to figure out how to make them die for 15 times, right? How to kill them 15 times. And then, but in order for us to present it, to present this part visually, it has to be something, we have to find a way to present it in a very creative way. So then I discussed with my DOP and everything, and then we thought of this way, present it like a film strike, a rolling film strike kind of presentation. And then I hope it worked out well, because honestly, we haven't screened this movie yet. There are only a couple of people watch this up till now. So we haven't screened this movie back in Malaysia. We haven't released it to theatrically. So we are, so you're the one of the first few batch of people to watch it. So I'm glad you like it, and then just thank you for the feedback.
No, the sequences are crazy. It was just like, wow. It was like anything that could, it's like Murphy's Law. Whatever could go wrong will go wrong. And it was happening. And it was just like, you guys kept just topping yourselves with each and every one. And I did like the idea of like using it as a film reel, because it's kind of like you're putting us, the audience, in inside of Akid's head.
Yeah.
Like, this is how he's seeing things play out, like this is how his memories look. So I thought it was very interesting, because it's visually different to how the rest of the film looks. So you're like, this is his outlook on life is different to what the rest of the film looks like.
Yep. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. So you're talking about, and I'll talk about the editing, because the editing is, like as mentioned, it's a very big part of this film.
My editing, he's Lee Pai Xiang. I mean, just call him Lee. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Lee, he has been my editor for. He edited. I think he edited, I would say, 90% of my films. We work together really well, and but the film reel sequence. I got him there. Like, he was stunned. He didn't know what to do, because I never briefed him of my visual of how we should present it in.
Okay.
So that moment, he left it there, and then, because the way we work is that it was every day after whatever that we shot on that day, he will take the footage and then he will start editing by himself. So at the end of the day, after we wrap, he would probably 70% done for the editing part. But then that particular part, he did not know what to do. Like, he texted me, he said, "Adrian, I need your help. What were you shooting? I have no idea how to put together all these sequences." So yeah, but anyway, he's good. He's good. He edited most of my films, and then he knows sometimes, the chemistry that I have with him is that I don't have to tell him. Even sometimes I do some crazy stuff on set. He knows what I want, and then it's fun, and it's a pleasure working with him.
Yeah, like the editing is amazing, but then also I gotta give the major props and applause to Beto, because this film doesn't work without him. Exactly. And the film starts up being it's about his emotions and it's about time, but it becomes very labor intensive, because it becomes his emotional state kind of drives the energy of the film. Like the sequence where we're talking, where he keeps traveling back over and over and over and over again, that's very labor intensive. Can you talk about working with him and just the speed with which he has to go through it, because he does a lot of running, but he's very emotionally exhausted in these sequences. Yes. So talk about working with him and just keeping his energy up. There's even one scene where he's literally I even put it in my notes. He became a stuntman. Yes. The character Akid became a stuntman in this film. Yeah.
He does a lot of stunt by himself. Yeah, he's an action actor. He fights a lot. He can fight very well. And then also, of course, you can tell he's a fantastic actor, right? And then I remember the day we wrapped, he posted on his IG and he said, finally the emotional roller coaster comes to an end. Yeah, because he's the Akid in the story, you can tell his emotion goes up and down and always, right? And then we discuss a lot. We talk a lot about the character, especially in the psychiatrist room. We shot that sequence first. That was the first part in our shoot. So we have the psychiatrist room scene first before we proceed to other scenes. So in that scene, we discuss a lot, where should we push the emotion. Now, where is the highest point for emotion in this whole talking scene, right? And we discuss, and then he has a lot of input, and then which is fantastic. And the good thing about, the one of the crazy thing that I think he can do is that he can just cry like that, and then he can just cry very emotionally, really yelling, screaming, type of crying, or he can just sit there and then be very calm, and then the tears just drop. So he's that good. He's fantastic.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry for just now. My dog, sorry, was a distraction. My dog
Oh,
just came
no.
into my room. She just burst into my room like the fast. I'm like, sit down.
Yeah.
So I think we have time for one last question. So I kind of like asking these questions sometimes because the film is about what you if you could change something, would you do it? If there was one thing that you think about, one thing you would change about this film, whether it's a particular scene or a process, if you could do it, think about it, and then would you do it? Would you change it?
Um, no, I would stick to my decision back then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna be like, Sarah, you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep it as it is, and whatever
Yeah.
happens, happens.
Yep. 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 Who knows? If I'm given a chance to do it again, I might repeat the same mistake. You know?
Or you might, even if you fix that mistake, another one is gonna pop up, and you're like, what am I
Exactly.
gonna
Even
do?
if I amended that, some other problems might pops up. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Adrian, for talking with me. And I think this is a really special film, and I really look forward to see what people's reactions to it because it is a very unique time travel film, and I think it's very emotionally driven. And again, I have to say again, like congrats to Beto, like he is the heart of this film, and like he made
Yep.
it work, and like so congrats to you and to everyone on the film.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
So everyone, that was another episode of Carolyn Talks. On this episode, I spoke with writer and director and producer Adrian Teh about his film Riversi, which is a Malaysian time traveling action drama, a little bit thriller film. Like it's a very unique film. Honestly, it covers a lot of genres for sure. And like again, like I'm blown away by Beto's performance. I think he's of the films that I've seen so far. I don't normally say this and I don't normally do it, but I think he's probably my favorite performance for the films that I've screened for the festival so far. It's like so good. But like the editing is on par. Like the editing for this film is like flawless. It really works because it's all about timing and editing and cinematography and all of that. But again, thank you so much to Adrian for taking the time to talk to me. And you'll of course find the video version of this film on my YouTube of this interview on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/. @Carolyn_Hines. You'll find this interview and other interviews I've done for New York Asian Film Festival, as well as for K Crush American Magazine, for the Busan International Film Festival, the Jeonju International Film Festival, Short Shorts Film Festival, in the K Crush playlist. In my YouTube channel, you can find my digital portfolio on author.com/Carolyn Hines. That's where you can find links to all of the podcast episodes, YouTube episodes, as well as all my writing, which is written interviews, film analysis, film reviews, op-eds, work writing about different aspects of film, all of that. And find me on Instagram and Twitter @Carrie, CNH, that's CARRIE, CNH12. You can use the hashtag Carolyn Talks to find those. You can, well, on Instagram it's pretty easy because I use Instagram a lot for promoting my work, but on Twitter you can find them there as well. And I've just been having a blast, like doing all these interviews for New York Asian Film Festivals. Like I'm so appreciative of the team for arranging all of these interviews for me. Like it's been so much fun watching all these films and speaking to the creatives about it. It's like honestly, it truly is a honor for me because it's something I never thought I'd be doing like 8 years ago. I never thought I'd be doing it, but here I am. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I appreciate everyone who listens to the podcast and watches the channel. It really does mean a lot to me. Like I just hope you guys really enjoy this. And if anyone wants to like chat with me, like I'm on Twitter all the time. I'm on Instagram as well. And so until the next episode of Carolyn Talks, everyone stay safe. Bye.